Hello, pilots. My name is Six Fairs, and welcome to the Pilot's Manual. Lancer is a highly tactical tabletop RPG that basically becomes a war game at a certain point, mostly in the way it stresses the effective use of actions, both specialized and general, and its focus on positioning. This series will walk you through each frame currently in the game, including frames from Massive Press's first-party releases, that be as of recording, Kraken Trade Baronies, Long Rim, A Wallflower, and Solstice Reign. Future episodes will also explore the narrative aspects of Lancer, such as the bond system that came out with Kraken Trade Baronies, downtimes, and clocks. This first episode, I want to teach you the fundamentals you will need to know before throwing yourself into the technicals of each frame and their own unique interactions with these fundamentals, as will break those fundamentals, essentially. I'll be providing talent suggestions, build path, and theory crafting that goes into each frame. I will say now, this series will seek to explain specifically the systems unique to Lancer, and will not be explaining more minor tabletop RPG concepts like rolling to hit, skill checks, that's beginner concepts. I want this series to be jumping off from the beginner to the intermediate. So, drink deep with me, pilot, and let us discover Lancer together. In Lancer, there are several categories of action types, and each of these action types have different rules for them. There are protocols, free actions, quick actions, full actions, and reactions. So, for an example term, let's split it up into phases we can think about, and what we are allowed to do in those phases. Lancer doesn't really order itself in this way, but this is like the easiest way to immediately understand what you're getting into. I like to do it this way because I think it's easy to learn Magic the Gathering when it's split into phases. So I'm also going to be referencing the stack. The stack is merely a concept saying what goes what in what order. So if something gets put onto the stack by one person via a quick action, and then there's a reaction, the reaction goes on top of that stack, and if there's a reaction to the reaction, that goes on top of that. And then they all resolve one after the other. So, speaking of Magic, let's go to the draw phase. Immediately at the start of your turn, before you do anything else, you can take protocols. These unique actions cannot be repeated after being made, but you can take as many unique protocols as you want. If this protocol action would allow you to do something that is typically a quick or full action, you could still perform those actions as a quick or full action later in your turn. After you're done taking all your protocols and applying their effects, we move into the next phase of the turn, the action phase. After protocols are finished being activated in the draw phase, you are free to engage with quick, full, free, and reactions. You can either take two quick, non-repeating actions on your turn, or one full action. If you take one normal quick action, you cannot take a full action on your turn afterwards. You can take as many free actions as you want, and these free actions can be repeated unless otherwise stated. Additionally, free actions that are usually quick actions do not count to quick actions, non-repeating limitation. So if you have a frame trait that says once per round after X requirement is met, you may do X as a free action, such as skirmish. You could then skirmish later on your turn. Then reactions are something you can only take of once per turn, but you get once per round, but you can take on any turn at any point during a round as long as you have the trigger. Or you have the trigger, and that trigger being the requirements for the reaction to go off. Many reactions have a once, I think pretty much all of them have a once per round limit, so you can only ever use that reaction once over the course of a round, even if you have a reaction on your turn available. So, let's say you were to take the Overwatch reaction, which we'll get into, and then somebody else were to provoke the requirements of an Overwatch reaction. You could not take the Overwatch reaction again until the start of your turn on the next round. However, if you have another reaction that triggers off a similar or a different set of parameters that also get met around that time, you can use that reaction, as long as it's on a different turn from when you use the Overwatch reaction. So, and quick, full, and free reactions can happen in any order without any limit, beyond, for reactions having their requirements met, and usually the same thing for free actions. Movement phase. Movement is a phase that can happen at any point during your turn, between or before actions. During the action phase, where your position you during the action phase, where you position your character based on their speed. Certain effects will end your movement phase early. You cannot move during any action. So if you were to skirmish, you cannot move again until you finish the skirmish. Or more notably, if you were to barrage as a full action, you cannot attack with one mount, move, and then attack with your other mount. You have to complete that action, because until you have rolled all the required dice, you are still in the middle of that action and you cannot move. That's why I place it into a separate phase, because it's kind of its own thing where things occur, such as reactions usually. The overcharge phase. Overcharge is a unique Lancer. I suppose it's a free action, but it is converting any one quick action into a free action. You initiate this phase by taking heat and turning any one quick action to a free action, as I said. Free actions ignore the repeating rule, so overcharge phase free actions also ignore the repeating rule. They're the same, you know. Overcharging costs a ramping heat cost. The more you do it, it can only ever be done once during your turn. So during your turn, you don't have to overcharge, but you can. The first cost that you take for heat is 1, and then after that's a d3, then a d6, then after that it's a d6 plus 4. Cool off phase. This is the phase after the end of your turn for the beginning of another character's turn. So this is where effects will be ending. There are a lot of effects in Lancer that end at the end of your next turn. So if you are currently under the effect of those conditions and statuses, those will then end now in what's the cool-off phase. This is more so a phase for DMs, really, because this is the part of the encounter where they should be turning off that sort of thing, so they don't forget. The off-turn phase. This just describes anything that is going on not during your turn. When it is not your turn, you cannot do anything other than take reactions or activate non-action traits in systems when their requirements are met. So now you know how you're going to do things on your turn, but like, what are you actually going to do on your turn? So I have this danger room set up in Foundry to walk us through all the universal actions. The universal actions can be taken by any pilot in any frame at any time, and it's fundamental to understanding Lancer to use these universal actions. Not all of them are going to be as ubiquitous as some of them, but they're all important to be aware of on your turn, because sometimes you may run into a place where none of your special things or a skirmish are a valid quick action, and in cases like that, you know, it's good to know there's a lot more quick actions than just shooting your gun and activating something cool. Yep. So remember, any of these quick actions can be used as a free action when you overcharge for it, and full actions cannot be used like this. So if you plan on taking a full action and a quick action, you need to overcharge for that quick action as a free action, and then use that full action with your normal action economy. So let's start with a skirmish. Skirmishing is one of the most universal actions you will take. When you skirmish, you select one mount you currently have and fire all mounted weapons. Choosing the order of weapons you fire from this one mount can sometimes be important for the purposes of talents and reactions, but I do believe usually it's the main then aux weapon. But sometimes you have weapons like a flex mount that have 2 auxes on them, or an aux. And in cases like that, you'd want to choose the order in which you fire your weapons. So let's say, hypothetically, with this Minotaur, the accident waiting to happen, I wish to skirmish with my flex weapon mount, with the cat pistol and the Nexus Light. So, because I have some sort of talent that gives me a bonus to damage when hitting for the first time while in a specific area, I want to fire the cat pistol first. And the cat pistol has a cone 3 effect. So I'm actually able to hit all 3 of these guys at once with just the cat pistol. So I select all of them. None of them have any cover for me or anything. Come on. What is this? Come on, hit the button. one sec. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I had to fix that. Learned something new about Foundry today. So yeah, the cat pistol has a cone 3 pattern that will catch all 3 of these guys in it. So we select all 3 of them in Foundry. This is a Foundry technical thing. You press T, then Shift T to select multiple targets, which is really nice. None of them have any cover from us. We don't have any accuracy on this. Just a flat roll against all 3 of them. And then I missed 2 and hit 1. So I hit the sniper for 1 damage, and then I still have a Nexus I can fire. So my light Nexus is range 10 and can only fire at 1 character at a time. So let's move this little fire template for our cone, and let's just take a finish on our skirmish at the good old sniper. And that's another hit for 2 total damage. This Nexus is also marked Smart, which means it targets an E-defense of a character rather than their evasion. E-defense is also what you would target for tech attacks, which we're going to get to later down this video. Now, let's say that rather than Skirmish, I had actually barraged. Then I would choose 2 of these mounts, and I would fire one of them. Or sorry, I'd fire one of them first, and I'd fire the second one. And the second mount I have is a heavy weapon mount, or my integrated fuel rod gun, which comes with one of the talents, but we'll just focus on the arc projector. I would be like, okay, I want to hit the sniper with this, with the end of this barrage, and then I'd roll the hit again. You know, there's a miss. So that's what it usually looks like, is you have multiple mounts on you for which you can skirmish or barrage with as a quick or a full action. Barraging is also important if you want to fire super heavy weapons. And super heavy weapons basically take up 2 mounts, so you have to fire both mounts that the super heavy weapon is on in order to fire it, is how it kind of works. But yeah, let's check what else is on my list here. So yeah, that's skirmishing and that's barrage. Oh, the most important thing about skirmishing and barraging: the second weapon you fire on any mount as a part of a skirmish or barrage cannot benefit from bonus damage. So if you have bonus damage, spend it on the first attack. You use it or you lose it. So if we would go back to that cat pistol and that Nexus Light, if I had Centimane and I fired the Nexus Light second and I crit, I wouldn't have been able to get any bonus damage off of that off of Centimane talents. Right. And now, last thing I think I'm going to show you with our good friend the Manticore here is Overwatch. And I think, yeah, I have actually a few more things to show you with this Manticore. So, Overwatch. An Overwatch is a unique kind of attack action that requires the use of Threat, which is a range archetype within Lancer that denotes an area in which a weapon can quickly react to a moving target. So as you might have noticed this earlier with the Catalyst Pistol, it has 2 ranges, a Cone 3 and this, which is a Threat 3. So what this means, essentially, is that, say the scout wants to move. I say, okay, I see that the scout's moving, I want to react to the beginning of that movement. You react to the declaration of a beginning of movement, and you would basically react to the scout while he's still here. So, in a case like this, if I were to fire my cat pistol, which is a CQB, which has a threat of 3, that catches that scout, and I react to his movement, I can take that exact same template I used before, and get all 3 of them again. This is the power of a CQB, being able to punish sloppy movement, or risky movement, because, the further you get into it, the more you know the exact threat of almost any NPC or character that in their weapons, so, essentially, CQB allows you to have a method of controlling that isn't directly through systems or technology, but through just the threat of damage. That's usually how skirmishers stay sticky on their target. It's because all melee weapons have threat. The only ranged weapon archetype that has threat is CQB, and we'll get more into the archetypes of weapons in another episode, or maybe later in this episode, we'll see. So, continuing on reactions. Oh, right. One last thing on overwatching. It is a skirmish, so it does follow the rules of skirmishing. So if I'd use this Catalyst Pistol mount, then I also get to choose to fire this Nexus without any bonus damage on it. So it would basically be a repeat of the previous skirmish I did before, and additionally you cannot barrage as an Overwatch, which means you also can't Overwatch with super heavy weapons, because even if they have a threat, even if they have melee, no cans, no sardines there. You don't have a full action which to react to them with. So the prepare action, in line with some reactions, allows you to prepare any quick action as a reaction. Now this can be a lot more flexible than threat, because I could hypothetically say, prepare as a quick action a skirmish. If I'd already skirmished this turn, I couldn't do it because prepare essentially counts as you taking that action. Prepare is just sort of like, as a quick action, I want to prepare this quick action. It's almost like an off-turn overcharge that follows the repeating rules. So if a weapon wouldn't allow you to fire it after moving, you can't prepare to fire that weapon after you've moved on your turn. So I'm the Manticore. I, as a quick action, prepare on my turn a skirmish against the sniper with my arc projector. I would want to do this rather than using my cat pistol, because I feel like I can get more damage with my arc projector at the start of their turn. Oh, huh. CQB with no threat. Funny. Okay. So, sniper starts their turn. They're like, I want to fucking shoot you in the goddamn face. Say, uh-oh, compadre, I have a reaction first, and I'm going to throw that on top of the stack before your turn continues, because I prepared the action of, at the start of the sniper's turn, I want to skirmish with my arc projector. You could also be more general and say, at the start of any character's turn, within the range of my arc projector, I want to react on them. Because if you can't meet the trigger until the beginning of your next turn, it fizzles, essentially. Your prepared action ends at the start of your next turn. Additionally, while you are preparing a reaction, you cannot take any other reaction. So if I prepared to fight with my arc projector while within range of my cat pistol, they could activate their scouts and move them without being threatened by my cat pistol threat. Right? So, in this case, the sniper started their turn, and we don't need to worry about that. It's because I keep firing Manticore weapons, and Manticore weapons make you hot. We'll worry about heat some other time. Or, well, if you're watching this, you should know what heat is. So, yeah. And I believe, yeah, the last action we're going to be discussing about with our friend the Manticore is Boost. The Manticore is a very slow character, so it needs to boost. Boosting essentially means you have your standard movement of, you know, hey, I want to move 1, 2, 3, right? Like 1, 2, 3. That's the Manticore speed. That's your standard movement. But let's say in this situation, my Manticore has already taken their standard movement, and they want to get a bit further so they can get in range of their CQB threat and threaten the, or even to skirmish with that CQB. You would take a quick action known as a boost, and a boost lets you move up to 1 extra or up to your speed. So in the Manticore's case, I would boost and I could take another 3. It essentially gives you another unique kind of movement called boost movement. Now, starting your boost movement is different from starting standard movement. So essentially, if I was in threat of something, let's you take the scout for example, and let's say he's actually not in threat. He's right here. He takes 1 standard movement, and let's say he used up the rest of his standard movement and he wants to get a bit further. He decides to boost a move. I can react to the beginning of boost movement as well as the beginning of standard movement. So you need to be careful where you're moving to and that you're not boosting within the threat of a character, because they can react to that. You can also stutter step it technically, because there's no rule against how you break up that kind of movement as far as I understand it. Maybe this is false and I'm giving false information, but start boost movement, start movement, that's a really great way to get reacted to like 4 or 5 times by different characters, but I can't quite remember the rules on starting and stopping different types of movement that you have available to you. Alright. It probably is that once you start one, you have to finish it before you can pick up another, but I know that there are certain types of special movement, like Jägerkunst 1, that interrupt regular movement. So now we are going to talk about some unconventional, unique melee types. We're going to talk about grappling and ramming. So, Ramming is a special kind of attack that you can make as a quick action against another character that is adjacent to you. Basically, consider this as like a built-in melee weapon with a threat of 1. Anything that doesn't actually use a weapon, you just sort of assume has a threat of 1, I guess. Though it's not a weapon, so it doesn't actually have a threat, and you can't use skirmishing reactions with it. But essentially, you make an attack with them using your grit, with no other bonuses unless you somehow have those. You prone your target on hit, and because it has the knockback property, you may move your target up to 1 space directly away from you as a ram. You can use this to control space, but more importantly, prone characters have 1 accuracy on them while they're prone from any source. But you need to keep in mind that characters that are larger of you cannot be rammed, and the attack must be made while adjacent to your target, as I said before. So I chose a Gorgon who's size 2 and a Strider who's size 1. And let's say I'm like, okay, open this up, do what I just learned I need to do, and throw a pilot in this real quick, because you can't actually roll without a pilot, apparently, which makes sense, in a weird little way. And let's say, click this button, it's just a flat roll, there's nothing else I got going on. Maybe I'll hit or miss. Okay, I hit. And let's include the cataphract in this example real quick. So I choose not to do anything with that. No knockback. I just knock him prone. And then I decide with my other quick action that I want to grapple this smaller character. And now since I've knocked him prone, I actually have an accuracy on this grapple. But what is grappling? It's similar to ramming, except it's a million times more complicated. It's a unique attack you can make against a target while adjacent to them. When a grapple is initiated, neither of you can take reactions, and neither of you can boost while grappling. If you're grappling a smaller character, the smaller character is considered to not be in control of the grapple and is actually immobilized on their turn. Which means since this character is prone and immobilized, they can't use their standard movement to stand. Movement taken while grappling a smaller character forces them to mirror your movement as you drag or push them around. So I think this is just easier to show. So let's hit this grapple real quick, and if I miss it, I'm just gonna hit it regardless because I have power here. Throw accurate on that. That's a critical doesn't mean anything. Grappling doesn't do damage, but yeah, grappled. So since he's smaller than me, he's immobilized. And the Manananggal, this Gorgon here, has a speed of 5. So let's say I've already used some speed. Let's move over here. What it means to mirror movement is that they never leave the space that they started off with you. So, come on, mouse. Essentially, no matter where I go, no matter how I go, this character needs to be in this space. If they can't, then you can't take that kind of movement, basically. So you're almost like a little bit bigger than you usually would be. Or it would be difficult terrain, something like that, you know? So Gorgon size 1, Strider size 1, Cataphract is size 1. Multiple characters can actually engage in a grapple. So let's say the Gorgon's turn ends after ramming and grappling the Strider, and the Cataphract starts their turn. And they're like, okay, fucko, I'm gonna get in on this. And they run up here, and they attempt to grapple the Gorgon. So, to do this, you hit this button on tier because the grit of an NPC is equivalent to their tier. We'll probably have an entire episode for NPCs because holy fucking shit. So that hit. I don't care what this says. This doesn't mean anything to me. This hits. And they're grappled. So, size is determined by the totality of allies and enemies in a scene. So, because there are 2 size 1s, I'll throw this little grappled status on this guy too. Since there are 2 sized 1s on the enemy team and 1 size 2, the enemy team is actually considered size 2. So, what happens when 2 characters of the same size are grappling each other? Whether it be 2 size 2s or 2 size 1s grappling 1 size 2. What happens is that when characters are of the same size, they need to make a hull contest as a free action to control the grapple. So in this instance, the Cataphract is going to activate that contest and is going to roll a hull, and he's going to fail. But, yeah. This just means that he won't control it on his turn, and they can't actually move him. So yeah, the Gorgon controls this. So the Cataphract can't use a boost movement to... Well, he can't boost anymore. He can't use his movement on another turn later. He actually doesn't have any more of his standard movement because he's now engaged with the Gorgon. And when you become engaged with a character by standing next to them, as long as they are of the same size or larger, your movement then ends and you can't keep going. Even, if you had more movement, you just lose the rest of it. And you'd have to boost to start movement again. For smaller characters, this could be ignored. So if the Gorgon was half size, God forbid, Cataphract could just run right past them. So in this case, there is a struggle for control. The Strider has a turn coming up next. The Gorgon just spent theirs. The Cataphract just went. According to Popcorn Initiative, it's now player activation. And I have a Goblin over here. Let's talk about some quick techs. The Goblin wants to help the Gorgon maintain this grapple because they know that there's going to be a hull checker contest coming up. So, it's all hull contests with grappling. So they're like, okay, quick action. Use this quick tech to bolster my ally. Now, quick techs describe all technological actions. If something has the word quick tech in it, that is a tech action. If there are things that are stopping you from teching, that is a part of it. So in this situation where a check or contest is known to be made, I'm going to use a quick tech called Bolster from the quick tech suite of the universal actions, and I'm going to bolster this character. And what bolstering does is on the next check, before the beginning of this Gorgon's turn, they have, or I believe it's the end of their next turn, they have +2 accuracy on the first check or save that they come across. So let's say that the Goblin does that, and then he also takes another quick tech system to lock on to the Strider. Locking on is a universal quick tech action. The character has to be within sensors, by the way, for all of these. Goblin has a sensors of 20, so we got it. We got him, right? So, bolster my ally, lock on to this enemy character. Locking on is a special status effect that can be consumed at any time by an ally against an enemy character, and when that allied character makes an attack against that enemy character, they can consume that lock on for accuracy, which is essentially just a d6. And if you have multiple sources of accuracy, like this Gorgon would against this Strider because prone and then consuming lock on, it would be 2d6, keep the highest one, or as shortened in these virtual tabletops, KH1, which I will probably be saying for the rest of this game because I'm not going to say keep highest one every single time. So the Goblin does that on their turn, and let's assume that works, and the Cataphract is, and the Cataphract and the Strider cannot break free from this Goblin's grapple, and in fact, the Gorgon controls the grapple now and can carry them around and stuff, right? So that's this interaction. Another additional note about grappling and ending grappling is if you can't take control of the grapple on your turn, let's say it goes back to the Cataphract, let's say they're an elite, they have 2 activations or something, goes back to the Cataphract, and they, instead of wanting to control the grapple, want to break free from the grapple. So they, as a quick action, they roll a hull, and let's say that despite this 2d6 advantage, the Gorgon actually messes up, and this guy's able to break the grapple, and he goes all the way over to this Goblin, who's a size smaller than him, and he grapples him, right? This is not an uncommon sight. The other way of breaking grapples for allies, or how enemies may break grapple, is using the ram quick action we discussed before. So here comes Caliban to the rescue. He's going to target the Cataphract, who is now grappling their friend, and my boy is going to use a grit attack against Dust Bunny, and that's a crit. So, using the knockback 1 trait of Cataphract, bada bing, bada boom, and Cataphract's prone. So, if adjacency is somehow broken with a grapple target, the grapple ends. Pretty simple, right? Makes a lot of sense. And let me double fucking check my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything, because grappling, again, is very, very tough. Right. Dragging or pushing or pulling a grapple target is considered involuntary movement and cannot be reacted to by other characters. And always remember that the very most useful part of this is if you prone them while grappling them, they're immobilized, they can't get up. Very, very good for bonus damage and for bonus accuracy. And additionally, if there's a character who's very dangerous because of their reactions, for example, like an archer, or a sentinel, both NPCs who take a lot of reactions, you can shut this down by grappling them. They're only size 1, so characters like Blackbeard or other size 2 characters, or characters who'd be considered size 2 to 3 for while grappling, can get in on that. I do believe. Is there anything else over here? Yes, there is. So this isn't over though, actually, I realize now. So let's talk about a few more. We have one more quick tech, and then 2 more sort of like universal mech actions. Hostile mech actions, I suppose. So, speaking of reactions and preventing them, this goblin is still within threat of the ram cannon of this cataphract. And let's say it goes to the goblin now. The goblin is going to, as a full action, take disengage. While disengaging, no amount of movement can provoke reactions. Basically, their movement can provoke reactions. Any other actions they take that can provoke reactions still provoke reactions. But also, very importantly, they ignore engagements. So if I was like, okay, I want to go over here, I can go over here. But, you know, maybe I actually just want to go right over here. Disengaging is a full action, so if I wanted to use an action on this turn as a goblin, I'll do what all goblins do, and I'll overcharge. And overcharging gives me a quick action as a free action, and this goblin is going to choose the quick tech invade option. Quick tech invade is a invasion type. And on your turn, there's only one universal invade you can use, but all invades are described as the quick tech invade option. And if you were to want to do multiple tech options, any combination of tech options, you do have to full tech, which also allows you to repeat any of these options. So if I had an extra quick action in me for a full, or if I have full action in me, I could full action invade as well, and I would do this same invade twice over on the same target, essentially, would be probably what I do. Now let's hit this +8 tech attack button, because that's what this character's about. Goblin also has accuracy on this, because of their frame chant liturgic code, I believe. And I'm going to be using Fragment Signal, which is the basic do no harm, take no shit, invade. It crits. Critting doesn't do anything, but when you're invaded by a hostile invade, you take 2 heat, and Fragment Signal has the additional effect of impairing you and slowing you, which I believe is slow. Here we go. So that's what happens on that invade, which is very good against a cataphract, because slow means you can't take movement beyond your standard. You can still take your full standard movement, but you can't do anything else. And the cataphract is strongest when they're able to boost, because they have a speed of 8, and that means 16 spaces of pure, raw, fucking power. So that is disengage, invade, full tech, and one more thing that I forget about, and everybody forgets about. Let's go back to the Gorgon, and let's say they want to make sure a Strider doesn't have a certain trait. They can do something called scan as a quick action. Scanning is a quick tech action you can take against characters to learn relevant information about them. This action is most useful for learning about optional systems an NPC might have in order to play around them. Because theoretically in Lancer, you should probably know everything the base systems of an NPC can do, and then the optional systems are what can surprise you. Because Lancer doesn't really operate on you not being able to know what your enemies can do as a measure of DM control over you, essentially. This is really useful at the beginning of a round to help you plan ahead or scout out the enemy, but it uses its uses is entirely tactical. and it gives no mechanical benefit like lock-on does. So it's a quick tech, full quick tech, like a whole quick tech, right? And all it does is tell you relevant information. So you'd know their HP, their heat cap, their armor, like OS burn, speed, evasion. You know all these numbers, and then you know maybe like one of their optionals. So for this one, be like reposition, which can be useful, especially if you're new. And I would recommend not besmirching the scan. It's very nice to know what an enemy is capable of, especially if it's an enemy that you're really not familiar with. But, you know, it's the often forgotten chat. If bolster is a forgotten quick tech, scanning is even more oft forgotten. The furtive pygmy of tech actions. And that concludes all the universal tech options. So, yeah, let's talk about activations and... yeah, let's talk about some activation stuff. And for that, I think I actually should bring out maximize minimal effort being piloted by Trouble, because, yeah. So, a Hydra is a good example for this because quick and full activations often deal with deployables. While playing, you may have systems that require quick actions to activate, such as drone deployments, and when you want to deploy multiple or activate multiple systems at once, it is called a full activation versus a quick activation. Or some systems even ask for a full activation, or a full action, is usually how it's written. You cannot use a full activation to activate the same system twice, which makes it different from like a full tech. So, in a situation in which I wanted to place down long size restock drone, their turret drone, I would do full activation, I place you, and then I could place an assassin drone as my other quick action. Or if I had two instances of the turret drone on this mech inside of its systems, like down here, if I, instead of having an assassin drone, instead had a second turret drone system, this is considered a unique system. Though I can't take multiple of these because they are unique. But probably a better example is the assassin drone. If I had two systems of the assassin drone, I could deploy both as a full action, because they are two separate unique systems is how they're considered. So, you know, bop, bop, that's my full activation to drop two assassin drones. Or if I didn't want to have two systems dedicated to assassin drones, I could instead drop two separate unique turrets. Two types of drones, the assassin and then the turret drone. Yeah, they look just like that, I promise. And sometimes we go back to our Manticore here. You just want out. You've just popped your heat cap a million times, and you want to do a quick action eject. Sometimes, you know, you have to. And you can eject as a quick action on your turn and send your pilot up to 6 spaces in a direction of your choice. So, for this example, you know, I yeet myself over here, right? I could probably get over here, yeah. I want to be nowhere near that thing, right? There's shit over here, it's scary. This puts your pilots, this puts you in pilot mode, which has its own unique actions you can take that I don't think we'll be able to really get to today, because don't be in pilot mode. And it impairs your mech. It impairs your mech, basically. Even if you have an AI inside of it, directing it, a mech with nobody inside of it is always going to be impaired. I did forget a full action. That's fine. We'll get back to it. There are characters who I could do this with. Yeah. So, quick action eject. Like, that's especially if you need to get out of there now. And additionally, you can only ever eject once until a full repair. So, don't waste it. So let's say if you want to leave your mech without blowing your one eject, you can use this full action called dismount to place yourself in adjacent space from your mech. So you don't get the distance anymore, you just get dropped in one of these. And if there are no adjacent spaces that you can dismount into, you can't do this. Additionally, as a quick action, you can turn off your mech and shut it down. It stuns your mech, but it clears all tech-related conditions, So if you got an invade that dealt you with like abjure or investiture, that's not something you'd be affected with. Or like a tech action has shredded you, like a fucking marker rifle, you can shut down, and that'll end all that goofiness. It'll also clear all your heat too. Yeah, so you'd be back square. But reboot costs a full action. There's also self-destruct. You may, as a quick action, send your mech into a critical state that will cause it to explode at the end of your next turn, or at the end of your turn within the next 2 rounds. You decide when it explodes, essentially, before you take the action. Your frame, when it explodes, creates a blast 2 radius that deals 4d6 damage to the character's continent on a successful agility check. They take half damage. So, let's say I'm gonna go critical anyways. We like to call this send it down mid. Movement, go critical, and then I eject myself 6 spaces away. Say that I wanted to pop off at the end of my turn, or maybe at the end of my next turn. These poor bastards all need to make an agility save or take 4d6 damage, right? That's sending it down mid. Especially if in a desperate situation where you really need to deal damage, but you know that your mech's not going to hold out much longer, this is kind of a nice last-ditch resort. NPCs can also explode, but they only have a big explosion within like 1 adjacent spaces rather than blast 2. Yeah. So, let's go all the way over here to my very special zone set up exclusively for hiding and searching, because hiding and searching is very complicated as well. This is its own section because it's fucked. If you thought grappling was complicated, then I would like you to buckle up, because there are a lot of things that go into hiding and searching and that dynamic between the two, and then you introduce a lot of systems and talents and traits that complicate it further, and we just yeah, we'll get into it. So, hiding is a quick action that can be enabled to go off in 3 ways. You're hiding behind hard cover, right here, right? This guy is behind hard cover from an enemy with line of sight. So like, this enemy is size 1. This cover is size 3. This Genghis is behind it. Cannot see this guy, right? And he can be just hidden, yeah? And that hidden will last basically until he steps into line of sight like such, and then he can get shot. So this would end line of sight because boom, you're here, and alternatively down here as well. Or if my sniper were to move over here, move themselves into a space in which they can see them. I don't even think the sniper can move that much, but this would also end hidden. Measuring from edge to edge, the sniper can't see the Genghis in that case. So that's one way to do it with hard cover, and if this wreck or this hard cover were to be destroyed by the sniper, dealing like 10 AP kinetic damage to it twice over, I don't know, snipers are crazy, man. This would, remove it, and then they could see you again. That would end hidden. The second way to get hidden, in a pretty common way, is soft cover. So pretend that this green area here is some sort of like lush forest, and the kobold is standing fully within it, rather than partially, or like sometimes your character can look like they're a part of a soft cover and get soft cover bonuses from it, but not actually be fully within it to be considered for hidden, and that's like a DM discretion thing. So that's that. It can get very complicated sometimes with maps that are a little less than perfect to hexes. So you're fully within this soft cover, and this has to be like a natural soft cover. You can't use systems or talents that put you in soft cover because they do obscure you, but as stated in the rules, none of those are strong enough to put you into soft cover. So if you were to drop a smoke bomb or smoke grenade that burst off in did a one blast zone, and you're inside of it and you're considered in soft cover, you could not hide with that. It's just would not be a thing you could do. You could, though, with a flashbang actually hide, because the characters within that flashbang cannot draw a line of sight outside of the flashbang. So technically, no character has line of sight of you when you make that action. That's an instance when you can do it, but not because it gives you soft cover, because it affects line of sight. So this kobold can hide and be hidden pretty well. But this kobold is within my sensors. So the sniper knows the kobold's in here. They can't direct any attacks against them unless they're a pattern similar to the cone from that previous one. You know, there's no raisin lancer. We have lines, but you know. So this sniper wants to try and search for the kobold. But before I do that, there's actually one more way to hide that is important to know. There is a status effect in Lancer called Invisible, and while invisible, you can always hide as a free action. You will lose hidden if you end invisibility while in line of sight of characters, but not a free action. You can just always hide successfully as a quick action while invisible. The Kobold has a way of turning invisible while being adjacent to hard cover, so that is something for you Kobold players. Once we get to the Kobold episode, we can talk about the value of hiding as a Kobold. So the sniper knows that this kobold's here and is going to force a scan or a search quick action. So you can end hidden by getting line of sight with them, or other ways, but removing their cover, forcing them out of it, other ways. But this is the way to do it with universal actions, is you search your target. When you search a target, they must be within sensors, and it forces a skill contest. The hider will be rolling agility, and the searcher, the sniper, will be rolling systems. So this can go two ways. The searcher finds them with a successful system contest roll. Let's check the agility on this pal here. Pretty good, but that's a really good roll from a sniper. So in this instance, hidden is broken. Then the sniper points it at, and all his sniper friends here, just laugh at you. They just freaking laugh at you. It's not working. Okay, they just laugh at you. And then they shoot you. They shoot you really hard. That's the way, especially with NPCs who hide. That is a way to handle them. Additionally, there are systems and types of traits that ignore hidden and invisible completely. So just be aware of that. Yeah, and because agility is the way to maintain hidden, there's no alternative to it. All hidden mechs are agility dump stat fiends. So I want to return over here to talk about an action that I missed, called the improvised attack. My friend here, the Blackbeard, who I'm going to install a pilot into real quick, wants to hit people really bad. And let's say this Blackbeard doesn't actually have any weapons anymore. They got destroyed somehow. They're in a situation in which they want to deal damage, but they can't through any other traditional means. They can run up to a space adjacent to this character and make an improvised attack as a full action. This is rolled the same way ramming and grappling is rolled, and on hit, it deals a d6 of damage. So that's a hit. I roll 1d6. That's 5 damage against the file. We're going to be using him later to talk about something else, because I want to get into multiple types of range profiles, because that's all the universal actions. That's all of them. There are pilot actions such as attacking and reloading and jockeying, but I don't want to get into those because pilots are weird, and I don't think that's going to be terribly important for until we until I do a pilot episode specifically, because I feel like I'd need to handle them in their own individual way. So, yeah, let's talk about the different types of ranges in this game. Everybody gets a juice foot. The Emperor, this Emperor dummy, has something within their integrated weapons called a Marathon Arc Bow, and it has a line 15. So what does line mean? Line means that I stretch out this till 15, and all characters within that line get hit. So it's similar to cone, or this blast radius, in which, it targets, multiple characters at once using a pattern. The Manananggal, who has range on their weapons, this is a Gorgon. Manananggal is the mech name from when it was last used. Range is 10 and 5 with a tactical melee with a threat of 1. As we learned before, threat is used to punish characters who step out of it with an Overwatch. But on melee weapons, it's the only kind of range they have. So, range is very traditional. You just draw a line to it with line of sight. You attack somebody who's within the range of your weapon, right? Cat pistol is very similar. The catalyst pistol, because it's a ranged weapon, while within engagements with enemy characters would have 1 difficulty on attacks made with it, but any melee weapons like the tack knife or any of the weapons that Blackbeard can field will also not provoke engagements, right? So my boy here wants to fire in a straight line and hit all 3 of these files. They could, additionally, because there's a benefit to hitting allies with the Marathon Arc Bow, could also do this. The line is 15, but the only rule with the line is that you cannot do this. You cannot break the ruler like such. This is not a straight line anymore, and will not be allowed on the test. So that's line. We've already seen cone up here, as demonstrated with the Manticore's cat pistol, or the catalyst pistol. So let's talk about burst and blast. Well, actually, we can go back to the Manticore for an example of blast. This is a blast zone. Some weapons can deal this up to a range. So, like an ordnance weapon, like a grenade launcher, or a rocket launcher, would have like a range of 10, and within anywhere in 10, you can launch this blast zone, and then roll to hit all those characters within the blast zone, right? Blast zone includes every space within it, which distinguishes it from something called a burst, which is represented by this symbol in Lancer. Burst targets all spaces within the burst except for the center. So if a burst 1 emanates from me with my Bristle Crown Flechette Launcher, nobody, I'm not going to get hit by it. Only this file would get hit by it. Similarly with threat. So yeah, it just doesn't target you, and this Flechette Launcher also doesn't have penalties from engage. Blackbeard's going to be the first episode. And as I said before, threat is a way to hold space to react with overwatches, but additionally, if you have more than 1 threat on a melee weapon, you can attack from all the way over here if you don't want to be engaged. This is really good for skirmishers who really don't want to be up in the front, but a Blackbeard, oh, are you kidding me? Get right in there. Get right in there. Right? So that is cone, blast, burst, line, range, and threat. I'm trying to think if there are any minutiae without getting into the weapon types. Yeah, not all blasts are just going to have a blast 1, this meaning it originates from yourself. A lot of them will actually have a range associated with them as well. So you drag them out and then center them on there, as I said before. But for cases like the Bristol Con Flechette Launcher, you can only do it while adjacent to characters. Because it's burst 1, and you can only center it on yourself because it's only burst 1. All right, Lancers, I want to thank you for joining me for the first episode, or well, episode 0 of the Pilot's Manual, Becoming a Lancer, discussing all of the universal actions. Do not hesitate to ask questions in the comment section. That is how we learn. Is asking questions and getting hopefully specific and helpful answers. For a lot of this, I used a tool called CompCon. So CompCon.app, it is a fan-made website that single-handedly makes Lancer accessible to everyone. It has all the rules and universal actions under the Action Economy tab. And yeah, good night. Thank you so much for joining me today.